Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to Looking Ahead, the series where I break down and analyze the meta, what's happening over Japan, and how it'll impact Taiwan. Today, we're talking about meta breakdowns and how the post-rotation meta is finally starting to shake up. The Day 1 and Day 2 meta breakdown has finally been released from the Champions League, so we're going to break down exactly what was the top deck. Was it Zard, Chien-Pao, or Lugia? We're going to break down that in just a short bit. We're also going to look at the City League Championships as well, see what are kind of like the top archetypes of this past week. There was nearly 1,000 results, so there's a ton of stuff to cover as well. There's also a Taiwan T-town league with over 300 players, which we do have the top 16 bracket as well as also the meta Day 1 breakdown as well. Plus, to finish off there was a tournament over in Japan with the Dragon Kings, which had some of the best players in Japan compete. And I want to showcase some of the lists that they played, kind of see what their thoughts and feelings are, what are some of the strongest archetypes right now in Japan. So without further ado, let's just jump right now into some new cards. We saw 3 cards and 2 of them are actually a little bit more relevant. The Infernape is pretty cool. You may attach a basic fire and basic fighting energy or one of each from your hand to any of your Pokemon anywhere you like. Not really too bad. It could have some synergy, but it is a stage 2, which does 200 damage, which isn't bad, but you discard an energy from this Pokemon. This isn't too bad. You can energy accelerate it, 200 damage, pretty good, but not hitting any relevant weaknesses. Iron Leaves is one cut thing away from being absolutely perfect, but honestly, I still think it's very strong. You have Avenging Edge, which was 100 damage, and if any of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn by any of your opponent's Pokemon, it does 60 more damage. That's 160 damage for 3 energy for a grass and double colors is pretty good. Now, let's think about Charizard. Against Charizard, which has grass weakness, you're only hitting for 320. That is 10 short. Now you do have Iron Crown, you have Future Booster Energy Capture, you do have Vitality Belt, you have some Defiance Band. There are so many ways to actually deal with this a little bit more damage, but I do think this is a good step in the right direction. It does favor, it goes a little bit more in some future box by having this little one tech inclusion into this one, help you against some, instead of using the Iron Leaves EX, you can go to the Iron Leaves basic one, which I do think is a pretty nice inclusion, but honestly, I don't know if it's going to see that much legs, because obviously the regular one can easily be splashable in so many other archetypes, as long as you do have that 2 grass energy requirement. This does have 1, so it's a good level for inclusion. And also Walking Wake. There's nothing really much to talk about, as you can see, where I always used to translate it, Justin Basil, didn't really think it was that strong. It could do 180 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, which honestly is like, okay, not exactly very strong, but it's good we're seeing some basic like non-rule box version of these future and ancient Pokemon. Now let's do something which we're always going to be here for, talking about the metagame, and kind of let's look at the Day 1 bracket for the Champions League in Fukuda. So we do see here that Charizard was in fact the top dog. 27.1% of the field was Charizard. That is an insane number. We haven't seen that like since the days of Lugia, when Lugia was one of the best archetypes. People are definitely really favoring Charizard and definitely shifting towards the Bibarel build. The Bibarel build is a very, very good and very, very strong attacking option. Why is the Bibarel build good? Well, it helps against the second best deck, Chien-Pao, because you can kind of evolve into your Charmeleons, 100 HP Charmeleons, and go into your Bibarels, or even the Bidoof, which can't be affected by any damage while they're on the bench. So having these big HP Pokemon kind of makes it very difficult for Greninja to take 2 prizes on that way. I do think it's a very, very good deck, and we saw the deck that did come second place, the Arceus and Vulpix deck. Charizard does have a very, very glaring weakness against it, and I definitely found that when they tested yesterday in a huge good EUIC bootcamp. So having 27% on Charizard is not a surprise. Chien-Pao is also 10.8. That was definitely not a surprise at all. We saw that as kind of been the case for Chien-Pao, especially in its Champions League as well. It's a very, very strong deck. Again, didn't really lose too many things, but also gained a lot of stuff. It lost some of its bad consistency cards, like drawing into cross switches, where you have to have 2 Battlefield P-Buffs in the late game, kind of like removing some of those things to Buddy Buddy Poffin, Prime Catcher, and Cryptomaniac or Codebreaker, and just stuff like that is just super, super consistent for Chien-Pao. One thing I was surprised was 10.2% being Lost Zone. So the Lost Zone Engine, definitely the Paradox version with the Roy Moon and 9 hands, has definitely become the more favorable way to play the deck. But being 10.2% was a little bit of a surprise. We did see it did get a top 8, I believe it was, which obviously did convert to a very, very good position right now. But I think losing the likes of Battlefield P-Buffs and more ways to switch out the cards, it does make it a little bit more of a liability. But you do get the emergency ball, which does give you that free retreat. So I do think that was a pretty good inclusion. Arczard was 8.6%, which I think was kind of a good representation. If people knew that Charizard would be the top deck at 27.1%, you play an archetype which has a pretty decent Charizard matchup, you're obviously going to have a very, very good time. So I do like that this deck was doing well. It's definitely a deck to really be respected for. Lugia was one of these surprise archetypes. As we've noticed, it's been climbing the ranks these past few weeks. Lugia is definitely much stronger, especially with Cinccino. I played against it, and it does feel like a little bit of a theme deck. You're playing 20 Pokemon, 19 to 17 energy. All your items are searching for Pokemon. All your supporters are helping you get your the Archeopsis in the bin. It's a very, very straightforward deck and can have single price Pokemon to deal 350 damage. It's a very, very strong archetype. Ancient Box being 6.2%, while Roaring Moon is being 4.3%, is actually quite a nice thing to see. I have played Ancient Box after this weekend, and I do think it's a few cards away from me. Absolutely perfect. I think the inclusion of a Roaring Moon EX in an Ancient Box is a very, very good way. It can help swing some favorable ones, whether potentially they might miss a KO against you, and you can really punish them with either Calamity Storm or, in fact, a gouging gouging. Roaring Moon is pretty powerful. You can use your ace-spec twice with the likes of Darkrai and multiple ways as well. Giratina was a big surprise. Giratina was a deck which a lot of people kind of have written off, especially in post-rotation. But we did talk about it last week. It actually is pretty okay. By having a game, saying goodbye to Battlefield P-Pass, saying goodbye to Escape Rope and Path to Peak, you do lose a lot of stuff what make Giratina so strong, but it is still a very, very powerful Pokemon. It hits and one hit kills pretty much anything. You can put Maxim Belt to have a positive Charizard matchup. There's just so many ways that Giratina is going to do really, really strong, and Charizard is respecting that by putting Mist Energy so we don't get any Frenzy Gouging or potentially a Star Requiem, and Golden Go finishing up by being 3.1%. Now, looking at this, was there any big standalone ones? The big thing was Future Box. Future Box was absolutely nowhere to be seen. We're going to talk about it a little bit, that Future Box had a ton of research, especially in the Champions League, happening this past weekend. But people didn't really understand exactly the best way to play it. People didn't know that it is just a Turbo Iron Hands deck. It's actually a very, very good, very consistent way and very, very fast to actually do pretty good pressure on this one. So that was a bit of a surprise. Having lost him be 10.2% was a bit of a surprise. I thought potentially Arctina would be a little bit more popular. I thought like percentage-wise could potentially switch. And Roaring Moon being 4.3 is again a bit surprised. We haven't seen it really have that much big success. It kind of goes in and out of the Champions League doing, the City League results. So that was a bit of a surprise as well. And Ancient Box, it's good to see it having 6.2%, knowing that a lot of people are really putting that faith into new archetypes. So if we look at the day two, we can see how much stuff has increased. And oh boy, did it change a little bit. We saw that Charizard did increase to 31.5%. As we know in Japan in day two, they can have the option to change their deck. People might have changed to be Charizard, or Charizard was literally that powerful. 31.5% is super good. Chien-Pao being 13.6 is another very, very powerful archetype. And even likes of Lugia V-Star being 12.2%. This is 50%, over 50% of the metagame. This is something to be really concerned about and thinking about for EUIC testing, if you manage to get into it. I luckily did get into it. I'm super, super excited. Hence, I did a big boot camp yesterday, retesting as many archetypes as possible. And you definitely be sure that I will be covering lots of the going up to EUIC from the Japanese point of view as well. So having these in three and the top ones are one of the strongest decks, and definitely the top three going into this metagame. We did see a decrease in Arctina by going down to 6.1, and even the likes of Lost Zone as well going 6.1%. Why was this? Well, potentially they might not have the best conversion rate. If we think about having such a high Chien-Pao, they have a good matchup into the likes of Lost Box because they have Iron Hands and also Greninja as well to really throw into one. Arctina being a little bit decreased, kind of like it's definitely a bit of a surprise, but the Charizard increase in Arctina, which is kind of like the counter deck, definitely decreasing, was a little bit of a surprise as well. We do see also Snorlax kind of come into this one by being 4.2%. So having that control archetype, definitely focusing more on the Snorlax build is stronger. And we did see that represented in the top 16 by having 3 different versions of control being in there. Ancient Box dropping down to 5.2, but Giratina Lost Zone did get up to 5.6. I do think this is a nice sort of metagame to see in day 2. We do see the drop of Golden Go, and even the likes of Roaring Moon definitely didn't really convert well to go into one. If we look about what actually did well in the top 8, we're not seeing any of the Arc Volt picks. We're not seeing the likes of Future Box. We're not seeing something like that, which did do really well overall. But also we can kind of go with Chien-Pao with a 13.6% meta deck. Why didn't that convert overwards? Well, it might just be consistency. It did get one top 32 and and three top 64s, which I'll definitely be covering over in the video later on this week, talking about how good Chien-Pao really is in post rotation. I think it's just a good representation about where the meta is shifted. I really like that Pokemon did release this one. Shame wasn't released this beforehand, so we could talk about it then, but I wanted to really break down this meta game. I think, especially with the testing, we do have an outline of the top three decks, Charizard, Chien-Pao, and Lugia, and people are really respecting that as well, with closely a little bit ones being Arctina and Lost Zone. So definitely something to be considered about. Now, if we look at the Taiwan Town League, there was over 300 players and a little bit similar response. We saw that 29% of players played Charizard, 20 played Chien-Pao. 50% of the deck pretty much was these two archetypes. People put a ton of love into this deck, which I think is a pretty good inclusion. Lugia again beamed at 12%. Seeing that trend, we're seeing the top three archetypes kind of like blend through, especially in two different tournaments. This is one thing I really like to notice when you're looking at the metagame potential-wise, when you're thinking about testing for other tournaments, stuff like that, look at the breakdown in these very, very large tournaments. What are the people playing? If they basically the top four archetypes are pretty much exactly the same, being Lost Zone, Lugia, Chien-Pao, and Charizard, really think about that. Those are the top four decks that you want to test for. If you want to play a fun deck, test against those four, because that's exactly the best way around it. One, we see Lost Zone to get 7, as well as also Ancient Box gain 7% as well. Definitely a little bit of a surprise as well. We do see Giratina was 6%. I'm unsure if it was either Arctina, it was combined with Lost Zone, but 6% was playing Giratina, 5 was on Mill, as well as Golden Go, and 9% was other. Again, what do we learn from this sort of breakdown as well? We're seeing the likes of Charizard still perform incredibly well. As Tom now, if we just look at the top 16 results, we do see that Bibarel build was the best one, but again, a second place, a top 4, and one top 8 as well. Big surprise here. We did see that Arceus did win, and it's good to see. It probably did beat both of the Charizards going into that the final as well. So there was a lot of Charizards. So it pretty much made that Arceus was a very, very good call to play for the archetype. Another surprise we are seeing here, we are seeing the likes of two Chien-Pao in top 16. There's also a Roaring Moon in that top 16, plus an Ancient Box in top 8. What I like about this sort of graphic as well, obviously it's very, very appealing to look at, but also it's giving a little bit more of a breakdown of exactly where the deck's kind of in place. We are seeing the split of the Bibzard, which I think is very, very good. I like seeing that responsibility. We can see that there was 3 Bibzards in here, but 2 Charizard and Charizard with Pidgey, so that's good for inclusion as well. I like seeing the Iron Leaves inclusion in the likes of the Arctina, which definitely has a very good matchup going into Charizard. Golden doing pretty well was a nice surprise as well. We are seeing much more of a hype in this Golden. I think Palkia is such a good secondary inclusion. You have the likes of Greninja play. It again didn't lose much. You get rid of your cross switches to add to Prime Catcher. You get rid of Badify Peapod, you add to Buddy Poffin. It just is that much more consistent. And Lugia getting a top 8 and 2 top 16s, again, does actually represent about how this deck is performing. I think there's no big surprise archetypes at all that did really, really well in this deck. But honestly, I think it's really good to see this breakdown. So I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a breakdown, breaking down a little bit more of the metagame as well. Why do I think some of these decks are kind of going with this one? I think these 3 archetypes, especially the Charizard, Chien-Pao, and the likes of Lugia, are definitely the top 3 archetypes you need to test. And if we just look at the top 16 breakdown for this week at the City League Championships, look at that. The 50% of the metagame is Charizard, Lost Zone Box, Chien-Pao, and Lugia. Definitely a little bit more of exactly what I've been talking about. But they have been skewish a bit. Chien-Pao did get overtaken by Lost Zone Box, which definitely I want to talk about a little bit later on. But a big surprise that's happened here is that Future Box finally got its big inclusion by being 6.9%. Yes, the Turbo Iron Hands deck, which kind of took everyone by storm and surprise at the Champions League, is actually very, very, very consistent and very, very strong. I managed to play against it, and I played a few games against it. I obviously played it into Lugia. We just wanted to play it for fun, and this deck has legs. It is very fast. It is very aggressive. Yes, it is one lost vacuum and the beach got away from destroying the entire battle and sort of strategy, but it does have a lot of legs. I do see that Charizard has gone down to a 21.3%, but I think having nearly 1,000 results gives that a good, accurate representation. It's a much more broader metascape, so we can understand exactly about why this archetype is doing so strong. We are seeing that the Mill is the strongest version. Great task people are enjoying, whereas still actually was the best performing deck overall. We are still seeing the Giratina one probably had a lot of love by getting that top 16 place in the Champions League as well. plus also having Roy Moon being 3.4% and the Ancient Box being 3.5 and 4.3 for the Ancient Box. I really like this representation for the metagame. I think especially the Lost Zone engine is having a lot of love. It doesn't really rely on getting weakened by the Vulpix pit outline from the Arceus build, whereas the likes of Chien-Pao and Charizard really do struggle against that one. I do think if you are worried about the Arc Vulpix one, a gouging fire in the not Chien-Pao in the Charizard is a potentially good inclusion. It does one hit KO you and can really put that pressure on in the early game. I think Lugia being up 8.4%, it is very, very strong as well, especially with the Cinccino. And if we just look at the best performing decks as well here, we can see that Charizard is still at number 1. I don't think it has actually left the number 1 since price rotation. Just look at that results. 50 top 8s, 15 wins, 28 second place. Very, very strong. Chien-Pao is rising up the top, which I'm very, very happy. I love this archetype being at to get second place with that 7 wins and over a results pretty good. We do see that Lost Zone does stay there in the end. The Paradox build is the strongest build by getting 6 wins and 26 top 8s, 12 top 4s, and 7 top and second places. And the Future Box getting that 5 wins, which is a big surprise as well. We saw quite a decks did get 5 wins, but this was the best performing one with 6 second places. Lugia did drop down 2 places by having a still pretty decent results, as well as also Stall did get 5 wins as well. I have included just Stall as well, just the block clacks, not including Mill at all. If I included the Great Tusk Mill, it actually got 8 second places this week. It did very, very well getting the finals, but Conte didn't really see it through, which is definitely something a bit more of a surprise to think about. It is a very, very good deck. I like Great Tusk as well, but I think this is a good, accurate representation of some of these 6 best decks. I like it we're constantly seeing the 4 strongest ones. The Lost Zone, the Chien-Pao, the Charizard, the Lugia. It's definitely like I said, it's finally shaking up, but also leveling out at the same time. We're seeing it even out to be, these are the best archetypes. We're seeing Stall do very, very well, even in a best of 1 format in Japan, where basically if you tie, both of you lose. It's still doing that well, and you can see the results as well by being at 5 wins as well. And the Ancient and the Future Box as well, the Iron Hand is actually an archetype which we should be talking about. And finally, I will now talk about the Dragon King Battle to 2024. It's some of the top players in Japan get in there fights to compete. Masters, Seniors, and Juniors from the Japanese Nationals, as well as also the Kyoto winners. All of the winners from this one, as well as also some of the Elite Four members do compete. But there is a fun twist. Each players bring 3 decks with them, but they can only use 2 of them against their opponent. Their opponent gets to disable 1 of them. So basically, it's an open deck list. They can see exactly what the 3 decks are. Say, for example, someone brings Gardevoir, Chien-Pao, and Charizard. They have a really bad Gardevoir match against 2 of their decks. They will disable Gardevoir, so we can only play 2 of them. But then it's a 25-minute best of 1. Now, this is really interesting. So I want to break down exactly what are the top archetypes. I know this is a very long video, and thank you so much for keeping on with this one. So let's just jump into quickly looking at exactly what are the type of decks that people brought with them. So 6 people brought in Ancient Box. Now, this was quite a big surprise as well. I like Ancient Box as well, and some of them even played it with the likes of Roy Moon EX. Ancient Box is such a strong archetype. It's so, so powerful. So I really like to see this did actually do really well. Charizard as well, good 4 places. So 4 people did bring Charizard as well. As well as also 3 people brought Arctina. Do be prepared against Charizard. 3 people also brought Chien-Pao, 2 Lugias, 2 Gardevoirs, 1 Lost Box, 1 Lost Tina, Stall, and that Arceus Vulpix. This is a whole breakdown of both the winners from Masters, Juniors, and Seniors division. So I really, really like that. They all got to compete together to try and be one of the best players in Japan right now. Why I think that's such a good thing to do for Japan. I love that they are bringing all the winners in there and then bringing in to see what are their insights into the decks. How are they kind of like playing out to this one? It is a little bit different. Like I said, it's a bit of a shake-up to where we've been talking about exactly what are the strongest decks. We're seeing that people really favor Ancient Box. Maybe they want to try it out. Maybe they really thought it's a good matchup against the players one. But we are seeing still Charizard be the second there. It's in that top 3 archetype. We're seeing that Chien-Pao and Lugia, again, is up there on one of the tops, one of the strongest ones. And Lost Box, only 1 person did play. So now let's look at their decks as well. Kind of see these as well. I'm not looking at every single one of them. We're kind of highlighting one of the decks which I kind of resonate with and talking exactly about why I think some of these are good inclusions and stuff to think about when you go to EUIC. So this is the Ancient Box as well, which Ryoto did play, who in fact is one of the Elite Four members and I believe did get top 4 at Worlds 2022. This deck here is not really that different to how we're seeing most ancient books as well. I like the Fluttermane in this one. Fluttermane is shutting down any of the opponent's Pokemon's abilities if it's in the active spot. I love the Great Tusk for the mill effect, especially in the late game. You draw your deck very, very quickly. Your opponent might draw the deck very, very quickly as well to keep up with this one. So kind of milling 2 cards is kind of a bit of a surprise, which I really, really love that inclusion. I love a Defiance Band in this deck. I play this deck against Lugia. And honestly, Defiance Band helped me get a one-hit KO on a Pokemon as early as going second. So, sorry, after they've taken a prize card. So it really does help you in that sort of matchup as well. You're always going to be behind, so that's why Counter Catch is such good inclusion for your gusting effect in the deck. I like Dark Patch. Dark Patch helps you fuel up your raw immunity, so you're not reliant on just Sada as well. They do, in fact, play quite a few other supporters. They're not just reliant on just the ancient supporters. They are playing the likes of Iono and Boss. Iono for that disruptive capability, and Boss's orders, again, for that gusting effect. We are wanting to get your supporters as quickly as possible, so playing that Pokegear is a very good inclusion. Plus, the rest of it is just very, very nice and streamlined. I think this card is, again, this deck is 1 or 2 cards away from being perfect. I don't know if we haven't found those cards yet. I think it's a fun tech. I think Royal Moon does have a huge capability to do these big, massive one-hit KOs, but it's only in the late game, which kind of the deck can struggle. You're two-shotting most of the time, and that kind of becomes a little bit of a tricky situation. Bibzard was a big popular deck, right? A lot of people did play, and this one here is a very, very good inclusion. A lot of people, I can see, we are playing 100 HP Charmeleon because people are scared about Greninja. People don't want to have their Charmeleons, Charmanders gone very, very quickly, and so that's why they are focusing that way. This build as well, which is very surprising, isn't playing the TM Evolution. That's why I wanted to talk about this one. It is playing the Arven package, but only 2 copies of tool cards, a Vitality Belt and a Forest Seal Stone. The Forest Seal Stone obviously gets you anything, but as long as it's attached to aluminium. But also the deck kind of can struggle by not playing the TM Evolution, so you might have a little bit more of a worth of a Chien-Pao matchup. Maybe this person who played this one, the Japanese national winner, wasn't really respecting Greninja as much. You kind of focus on going much quicker. You have the mana feed, that you've got so many ways around it to try and get into it one. That could be in theory about why, but I think it's a still very, very good one. I do think you still need the TM Evolution to make your build just a little bit stronger. Gain out that, if you're going second, that Bibarel, gain that Charmeleon out, I just think could work so much stronger. But this was a very, very good inclusion as well. That's why I like to see many different lists as well. That's why I want to showcase it to you guys as well. So you're kind of like, you see and understand a little bit more about where certain archetypes are evolving. Plus a Code Breaker as well works really well with your Bibarel to get potentially your Charizard plus Rare Candy. Arctina, this list here is a pretty nice one as well. You do play obviously the Iron Leaves, which is a good inclusion, but also Ditto. Ditto can work really well. If you start with it, you can switch out of an Arceus. If you kind of like switch into it and then move it around, it's just a fun little card to really include. Kind of like switch out to be one of your Arceus ones, one of your Giratinas, one of your Bibarels or Squirvets if you need it as well. I do like the Iron Leaves, especially to really help you in that Charizard matchup. That's why you play Iron Leaves and Maximum Belt to get those 2 big one-hit KOs on Charizard. Then the other one you can chase down either Rotom or a Luminium. We do play that Team League Headquarters. As we mentioned, we play there's a lot of basic Pokemon right there, and if they have to put additional 1 engine onto it, it can be very tricky. Think about like the Mill deck, think about the Ancient Box, think about even the likes of even Chien-Pao having 5 engines and 9 hands to kind of get a big one-hit KO on two prizes on the Bibarel. That can be really devastating. Like pretty much putting a ton of resources into this one. I like Velocity as well to kind of get rid of potentially some cards, heck, even some Charizard to make your matchup even better. But one thing you do have to realize is if you play a Team League Headquarters, you need 4 energies on your Iron Leaves to get that KO on the opposing Charizard. Plus, we do play some good disruptive cards: 2 Boss's Orders, 4 Ionos, and 1 Sharon's Care. I think this is one of the best Arceus Tina lists I have seen. I think it's really, really strong. I love the disruptive capability because you've lost Path to Peak, kind of gaining that Team League Headquarters, gaining the loss of Velocity. I think this is a very good inclusion. Chien-Pao here, my favorite deck right now in the format, and this one here is a little bit different, played by the Kyoto winner in the Masters division. They played the Iron Bundle as well as also a Luminion V. These are definitely some inclusions we're not used to seeing at all in some Chien-Paos. We always saw Iron Bundle, I tested against it in the mirror match, it does work for that fun guesting effect, but also we did see it played by Azul and Cruel in LAIC, but Luminion, I feel like it hasn't been a deck in quite a while. Yes, it does help you get the turn to Irida, Baxcalibur, Rare Candy. It helps you in that one, but it is a bench space liability. But you do kind of go Aqua Spin to like pop it back into the deck. The rest of it is very much straightforward at how we're seeing this deck. We're seeing a Canteen Clone, one copy of that. We're seeing the two Pokestop, because again, there's no path to peak, so you don't need to rely on really like removing your path to peaks out as quickly as possible. The rest of the deck is very, very good. And with that, I think two Chien-Pao is definitely more optimal right now. Again, you're not playing Battle for P-Pass, so you're not worried about kind of getting out as early as possible. You do play Heavy Ball, you do play 2 copies of Super Rod and 4 copies of Ultra Ball and 4 Nest Ball, so you have multiple ways to kind of get out your Chien-Pao. Definitely a very strong list for Chien-Pao, especially one for early testing, but does play some interesting techs like the Iron Bundle and Luminion. Lugia, this was played by the Japanese winner again. And like I said, it's like a theme deck. You play a ton of Pokemon, you play a ton of item card, which just is searching out your Pokemon, your supporters, help with their discarding and disruptive capability, and like so many energies. There's not really that much to talk about, if I'm honest with you, with this Lugia list. Bit different, there's no Jacques, which we've seen in a lot of Lugia lists right now, or the Azor, which does help you get like your Stinchinos and Arceus, but doesn't help you get your Lugias, which is exactly why people are playing the Jacques, so they can get out that Lugia V-Star as well. Yeah, nothing really much to talk about this Lugia. I think it's a very, very straightforward list, but definitely no Jacques was a bit of a surprise. Gardevoir, though, seeing a Gardevoir player played by the senior division is quite interesting to see. Gardevoir obviously had a ton of changes into post-rotation. By saying goodbye to so many cards, I kind of seen this new evolving one. It was quite nice to see. We see a Galley to kind of help you get your supporter options, and also the Screamtail and 2 copies of Drifloon as your attacking option of choice. Screamtail has that that bench snipe capability. Also, Drifloon can do a ton of damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. But we do play a ton of ways to kind of boost up the damage. We play Hero's Cape, we play Cape of Toughness. It does make them 2 prizes, but that's kind of okay overall. And also 1 copy of Bravery Charm as well. I like the team evolution, try and get out your Curlies out very, very early on, especially if you chuck a Rolks out there, or even a Mimikyu. You chuck a Mimikyu, team evolution, evolved 2 of your Rolks into Curlies. It can just make the deck a little bit more streamlined. Yes, you are relying on reversal energy, so you can rely a little bit more on less energy counts because you're not going to play a ton of energies. You need exactly enough to get these big one-hit KOs, and this player definitely recognized that 8 is the magic number for the deck. This is definitely a lot more of a different deck than how we're seeing Gardevoir. Could this be the best way to play Gardevoir? There was also a deck which played with Raging Bolts, so again, there are multiple ways to try and figure out where is Gardevoir situated. Will we figure out EUIC? Will Japan figure out beforehand? Definitely, I'm really excited to tune in exactly about how the meta is going to shape around Gardevoir EX. And it's the Lost Tina played by the Kyoto winner. I do really like this deck here. I think it's very strong. I like the Forest Hill Zone in Giratina because sometimes you might not be able to start Requiem. Sometimes you're okay not to do this one, and you'd rather help your consistency by getting one of the cards you might need to have. It does help in the Charizard matchup by having that Iron Leaves. Again, you're not playing Maximum Belt in this deck, so you don't have 3 outs, pretty much 1 hit KO Charizard, but having an Iron Leaves plus Star Requiem, this is a very good inclusion. I really, really like this deck for the Lost Zone Tina. I think having Tina have this resurgence in the post-rotation metagame is really, really needed, and it's one of the best decks to play. It was pre-rotation, and it's still trying to find its feet. We've seen here there's no stadium cards. We're seeing that there's a little bit less switching outs as well, because we aren't playing, they don't have as much more switching out, so you are going to be relying on that Abyss Seeking, especially if you are going second. And Lost Box as well by the Kyoto winner again. I really find this a very interesting list by playing the Hooper EX. Now it does work a little bit because you are playing Darkness Energies with the Roaring Moon, but also it can one-hit KO the likes of Arceus. It can hit one-hit KO the likes of Miraidon, so if there are any around there, and also the likes of Iron Hands as well. So it does have some utility and not just these big one-hit KO capability. The rest of the deck is very much how we're expecting most the Lost Zone package to go. The French Divided by the Poffin, having the likes of Ditto, less stadium cards, but a little bit more switching cards in this deck where we've seen the Tina ones, we've seen the 4 switch cards, we've seen the 2 emergency boards, we've seen the 2 switches as well. I think this is a very, very good Lost Zone package, a Lost Zone deck. As we've seen, it is a top 4 archetype, so I'm excited to see how the deck is really going to progress overall. So that brings it to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed this one, a little bit longer to how we used to see this one. But I really want a big takeaway is one. Will Charizard actually always be a 30% deck? We've looked at a ton of results and we've seen it kind of like vary around. We saw it as low as 22%, sorry, 20%, as well as also high as 32%. So it's a very, very popular deck. Have all the top decks been found? We've outlined pretty much the top 4 archetypes. We've seen the likes of Lugia, Lost Zone Box, Chien-Pao and Charizard as well are those purely the top 4 archetypes. Will this change in the City League result? Could the future box come out? Could ancient box as well? And will any creativity shine through in post-rotation? That's a topic I love to cover, and I'm definitely going to be talking about that next week. I love seeing the creative archetypes that kind of do well in post-rotation. I think that's one of the best things about this one, because some of the creativity really bleeds into exactly how your thought process, how the metagame is really evolving, and how you're adapting on the fly. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below, what is your favorite archetype right now in the metagame? Obviously, for me, it's Chien-Pao, but everyone to each their own. See you guys later. Bye for now.